Happy Agents. This is Mark Gates. I want to talk about a subject that keeps coming up regarding back agent and minimum document requirements. The word minimum implies that it is the least amount possible in order for a transaction to move forward. The problem with that word minimum is it does not cover all the bases of what's going on in an actual transaction for real estate. As you and I both know, there are multiple addenda that are necessary when you're doing a deal. Minimum requirements just means that there are certain things that we're looking for always, but there are other documents that will always come into play that are not necessarily covered under that minimum requirement. There is the age of the home, there's the homeowners association, there is the mud district, and other such addenda that might come into play. There are changes to contract that take place after the option period. For example, are you going to reduce the price of the property? If it is reduced, what's that reduction? It has to be addressed with an addendum that talks about a change of dollar amount on the contract. Third-party financing has to be changed. If there are issues that come up in the seller's disclosure that were not disclosed, there has to be a change to the seller's disclosure. So a lot of things can happen that don't necessarily fall under the minimum requirement. So when you do send in a request for CDA, one of the first things we look at is the boxes that have been checked on the 1-to-4 contract to see what addenda has been given to the client for their signature. If it is not posted in BackAgent, we're going to come back to you and ask you for those addenda. The reason we're doing this is because it's part of the contract. We're trying to protect you by making sure that all documents associated with the transaction are uploaded and that they're going to be archived in case something happens. Minimum is a favorite word of attorneys because that means that you've done the minimum amount required for a transaction, but you've not told the entire story. An attorney friend of mine once told me, he said, the people that win in court are the ones that tell the best story. He went further to say that the ones who tell the best story have the best documentation. So our job is to make sure that you have the best documentation, that you're protected. I've already been in a situation at Abbey Realty where a gentleman walked into the front door, slapped me with a piece of paper and said, "You've been served." I was served with a subpoena that was requiring all, that's capital ALL, all documents that were associated with a particular transaction that transpired with one of our agents at Abbey Realty. I had to go into BackAgent and pull every single document. I had to provide those documents to the attorney. I even had to provide any notes of when things were placed into BackAgent. By the way, we do track that. Anything that's done in BackAgent, we see an audit of it. So we had to provide all that information to the attorney and to the courts. It wasn't fun, but the good news is the agent that had uploaded documents for the transaction did a very good job, and his story was very complete of what had transpired in that transaction. You don't want to get in a situation where your story is incomplete. If your story is incomplete, somebody will fill in the blanks, but it's not going to be you because your documentation is not there. So, what documents are required? Well, let's put it another way. What is the best practice when dealing in real estate and archiving transaction data? The best practice is any document that has anything to do with the transaction should be loaded into BackAgent for your protection and also for the protection of your clients. So, if you have something that is associated with that transaction, for example, what data did you use if you're representing the seller to come up with the price of the property? If you're representing the buyer, what documentation was used to ask for repairs? If you're representing the buyer, you want to make sure that you've got all of these things that are necessary for the financing to be uploaded. I want to see every possible document that you dealt with loaded into BackAgent so that you are protected and so that Abbey Realty is protected, and also so that our E&O insurance does not increase. Because if E&O insurance increases, that means your transaction charge would have to increase to cover the charge of insurance. So, what's best practice? What's the best thing you can possibly do? Well, you need to get into a healthy habit of uploading your documents as soon as you get them. Time will take over and you will forget. And the worst thing that can happen to you is get ready for a CDA. You're going to closing and then realize that you're missing documents and you've got to go back and either get signatures or you've got to figure out where they are. Get into a good best practice of loading your documents up to BackAgent as fast as possible. That means that they're going to be there, secure, archived, and ready. And then when you get ready for that CDA, you know that everything's ready to go. They'll be approved swiftly, and you'll get your documents back in order to go to closing and get a table funding. So I guess the crux of all of this is work smart. Get documents turned into BackAgent as fast as possible so that you're protected. And more importantly, tell your story. Make sure that the story that you're telling is the entire story of what transpired during that transaction. Thank you very much. I hope this helps. And if you have any questions, we're always here to help. We're always here to answer questions. Thanks again for listening. Let's go there together. This is Mark Gates.